talking about coaching and mentoring. So every successful individual accomplishes their goal with the support and guidance of their coach or mentor. And this can be somebody who is an appointed coach or mentor, or somebody who is informally coaching and mentoring you as an individual. And it's really the coach's ability to motivate and communicate and establish a relationship with their coachee or their student that actually brings out the core values of the people that they're coaching. But business coaching is quite a new phenomenon that really has developed in the corporate world, and the objective of business coaching is to facilitate both behavioral and psychological changes in executives that really outweigh the management styles they have. And the basic aim of business coaching is to really make people in the corporate world aware of their impact of others, to learn how to motivate other people and to build positive rapport with other people in the organization. And in our day-to-day, we typically have someone who could be an informal coach who gives us advice or guidance on how we make the decisions as we go about our daily lives. Now, coaching and mentoring could be used during the employee orientation process. And this is really a process that is organization-wide, and it's managed from the top or from the leadership team, and it helps to increase employee integration into the company and helps to improve their performance through interventions during the processes of the organization as it's living its life, I guess, using knowledge from behavioral science. So the development of each individual employee is the process through which the employees develop their internal capacity to reach their highest professional level within that particular organization over the long term. So this really means that the orientation and development of employees is something that the leadership team are responsible for. They really have to be implemented by the direct boss of the individual and not by the leadership team, but the individual employee must be fully committed to this particular process of orientation and development. Let's now have a look at what employee development is. So this is where we really move from simple training needs on skills and actual learning needs. And this means that the individual employee will take ownership of their education. And the kind of learning within coaching and mentoring dictates that the best way to develop is really to pair up the individual employee with another person in the organization. And this could be done in a few different ways. This could be done in on-the-job development. So when you're doing your role as an individual, you have a coach or a mentor assigned to you that will help you in that particular role and will answer your questions and give you guidance. But also, you could actually use distance learning or e-learning. So if you have a skills gap in your interpersonal skills, for example, your company may provide you with digital training courses that you can use to fill that gap and learn new skills. But actually, with coaching and mentoring, we don't really look at the development of technical skills. It's more about the development of interpersonal skills, self-management, and attitudes. Let's go into a little bit more detail now on what learning on the job really means. So when we look at coaching and learning on the job, this is where the line manager or whoever is supporting the employee to overcome their difficulties or to learn new skills helps them to take action by empowering them. So the coach will ask questions, the coachee or the employee will reach the conclusions themselves, and ultimately they are responsible for taking the decision to move and to actually take some action. So it's the employee who decides they'll take action, the coach will just coach them through it. But with mentoring, this is really when an employee gets advice from a senior person in the team that's in a different department, not in the same department as them, and it really helps them to develop their career in the organization and find the appropriate ways of behaving for that organization. So this person will be an advisor and not somebody who will ask a lot of questions to get the employee to draw their own conclusions, and that is what coaching is. Another way that you can learn on the job is actually through peer relationships. So it might be that there is an informal buddy system where peers will information share, they will give themselves job-related feedback and give each other emotional support. Sometimes you'll find when somebody new joins the organisation, there is a buddy system for the new person to pair up or buddy up with another person in the organisation who help them settle in, help them understand their job in the first 3 months. So self-development is a crucial part of learning on the job, and it really is the everyday experience of the individual that's being enhanced. And it's really a conscious effort. So the individual is consciously aware of the learning they have to do and the learning that they do. They're also responsible for their own development and can often actually plan their own development as well. And they do this by analysing their strengths and their development needs and then planning their development goals. But they may actually receive advice or ask for advice from a coach or a mentor in terms of the best way to go about how they get the support they need to achieve their development goals. There are also a concept of self-development groups that exist within organizations, and this is where the group will get together in a meeting, whether it's every week or every month, and the individuals in that group will talk about their personal development goals, the issues they have in the organization, and whether they have some work problems they want to discuss. And this is an environment of high trust, because individuals will come together to discuss their challenges, and whatever is discussed is kept within the group. But actually the leader of that group isn't really a technical expert, but acts more as a facilitator. And so they really are the ones that will help the team or the group itself coordinate itself in order to get the best of what's needed by each of the individuals. And it's really important for each individual to understand the processes and the rules that are governing this particular group. Let us now go into a bit more detail with coaching. So coaching is a technique where the coach will help an employee to overcome their difficulties and to achieve their goals, and they will actually empower them to take action and drive them to action, but the ultimate decision to take action is with the employee. So it's down to them to take the action. And actually the coach doesn't have to be an expert in the field. They really need to have the correct questioning skills in order to allow the employee to draw their own conclusion. And really the coach will help the employee tackle their weaknesses, help them overcome any existing difficulties that they have. And all of this is done through developing their self-awareness and developing their accountability. And typically in corporate coaching or business coaching, coaches come from outside of the company. Within an organization, there are different types of coaching that's available. You can be coaching for skills. So if there's certain skills that need to be developed by the coachee, then a coach can help this coachee develop those skills. You can also be coaching for development. So if the individual is looking for a promotion or a change in their role, a coach can help them achieve that. And you may also look at coaching for performance. So this is really how can we encourage and develop an individual to improve their performance in their role, or to do that in order to achieve a promotion in the company. Then you have executive coaching, which is really coaching the executive team, and the skills and the awareness needed to build this role is very different to a coach that is coaching for performance and development and skills, because those coaches are available to the lower levels of the hierarchy. And then transformational coaching is really more long-term coaching, and it looks at effectively how can somebody's skill sets be transformed over time. So with each of these coaching skills or the categories, there is always an end goal that the coachee is aiming for, and the coach will help them to get there. So we can now go into a little bit more detail on what it means to be a coach for skills. So how are we coaching for skills? So if this applies to executives, this is when the executive will learn specific abilities that will give them a perspective on how they are coordinating relationships and completing their role as a manager and a leader. And it means that they actually look at developing more innovative tactics to handle differing situations, possibly situations they haven't actually encountered before. And they are actually, through the coaching, refining their existing proficiency and using it as a basis for the coaching relationship. And in this particular situation, the coaching relationship is spread over a series of weeks or months, so it's fairly long term. When we look at now coaching for development, this is really looking at the characteristics and the competencies of the person that is being coached and how we can make them better. So how can we improve the characteristics and competencies of their choice? And it looks at, how do you as an individual act and behave, and how can we enhance that in order to allow you to take on bigger challenges and to achieve them. And this could be maybe refining your listening skills, maybe looking at how you can create a strategic plan, maybe you need to become better at time management, maybe you have to be more open and receptive to what others are saying, or potentially it could encourage the leader or the executive to be more involved with their team members. So coaching for development really focuses on overall development of the individual by not just training them on how to handle new situations, but actually broadening their technical know-how and helping them to integrate their interpersonal competence into these new experiences. Coaching for performance is a little bit different. It actually involves evaluating the performance based on the personal capacity of the individual as well as group feedback, which they receive from their team. So it isn't enough really that you have, technical skills or academic knowledge as a leader, but you also have to have really positive rapport and a good relationship with your team. So you would treat your people like human beings and not like machines. And really how an executive or a leader handles their team, how they manage their team, really reflects directly on their performance as a leader and their credibility as a leader. So performance in this case isn't related to how quickly or effectively you finish your work as an individual, but really on the collective effort of the team, the spirit of the team, and how the executive or the leader was able to encourage that, develop that, and support that. So coaching for performance really develops the employees from their existing position and helps them to flourish into a new position, usually with more or different responsibility. Let's take a look now at executive coaching. So this is usually when employees will climb the ladder to the executive level, and sometimes it might be perceived as being arrogant or too full of themselves from team members that they used to manage. And so to be a successful coachee, the executives really need to be strong enough to handle constructive criticism and be able to win the support of people around them. And in this type of coaching, the executives will need a coach to help them to plan their strategy on how to win people over. So it's not just about how to be more likable, but it's really about how to be a more integrated member of the team and a leader that people trust. And so the executive also needs to develop their mental and emotional capacity to handle the new responsibility that they have. And the coach will actually help the executive through things like receiving negative feedback, maybe negative mental blockages on the work that they're doing, and the new skills that they need in order to do their job as an executive. And in this role, the skills of communication and leadership are very, very high when you are an executive. Finally, let's look at transformational coaching. So this is actually more personal and potentially intimate in its approach. And the idea here is to really analyze the aspects of the behavior of the coachee that stop them from performing at their full capacity. And it starts off by looking at their current abilities and behaviors and actually reworks them in order to improve them. And so there may be some sort of analysis of their everyday interactions and looking at how they approach certain things. And the coach will give advice in order to help the individual improve. So the coach will identify any limited behavior and gives the coachee a plan to steadily change this behavior. So it's really coaching that comes over time. And because transformational coaching is quite personal in nature, the coach and the coachee must have developed their trust between them before this kind of coaching can happen. So we've looked in depth at coaching. Now let's move on to mentoring. So mentoring really is a technique where an employee receives advice from a superior in the organization, so somebody who's senior to them, and the advice is really around how to behave or how to move in the best way within that company. And this person isn't necessarily from the same department that the mentee is working in. The mentor really has a model of behavior to follow, and they'll have more experience in the company, and they are a reference for the mentee in terms of what behavior in this company looks like. So even though the mentor is not from the same department as the mentee, they're actually from a higher part of the hierarchy than the mentee. And actually, when it comes to potential times of crisis, having a strong mentoring program helps companies to cut costs because it allows them to take advantage of in-house knowledge and in-house training. So they don't really need to spend too much money on a lot of training and development on their employees because existing, more experienced members of staff are willing to mentor those that are lower down the hierarchy chain to them. And actually it's important for the mentors to understand what the benefits are of mentoring. So why would they want to become a mentor? What's in it for them? That has to be clear to them before they start the mentoring journey. And another thing that a mentor will do is they will teach the corporate culture and corporate values to the individual they're mentoring. And this is really looking at what can and can't be done in the companies, what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. So whether somebody is receiving coaching or mentoring, they each have very specific goals. The first of these goals is to enhance the performance of the employee in their current job, and you can do that whether you hire a coach or whether you hire a mentor. It also helps to improve the self-confidence of the employee and also helps to improve their personal abilities. It will allow them to achieve their goals, be a more effective part of the workforce. It will help them to actually improve their self-awareness. Because as they're speaking to somebody that is either coaching them or mentoring them, they become more self-aware, they become more in tune with who they are and what they do and why. But in all cases, both coaches and mentors need to be close to their employees, not necessarily geographically close, because coaching and mentoring relationships can take place digitally over digital platforms, but actually be emotionally close to them so they're able to create an environment of openness and trust. And when you're a coach or a mentor, empathy is a mandatory skill to have, and high empathy is a mandatory skill to have because you need the ability to understand others and understand yourself. So what skills are needed for somebody to be a successful coach and mentor? We've identified 4 key skills. The first skill is your ability to perceive emotions. This is how far you can detect emotions in people, to make sense of emotions in people, and actually do the same for yourself. So you're able to recognize what somebody's feeling, or at least be able to ask the questions for you to then know what the person is feeling. The next skill is to use emotions, and this is used in the most positive way. So you're able to harness emotions to facilitate activities like wider thinking or problem solving or becoming more self-aware. And as a coach or mentor, you're able to use a changing mood to create a positive change or to influence the situation positively. So whatever you're trying to achieve with the coachee or the mentee, you're able to take advantage of changing moods in order to still help them achieve their goals. So as well as perceiving emotion and using emotion, a coach and a mentor will be able to understand emotions as well. So this is really looking at understanding the language of emotions to really appreciate the complicated relationships that a person has with their emotions. So you're able to detect slight changes in emotion and apply them to the context of the person that's in front of you. So really understanding the emotions of the individual in front of you. And the final skill then is to be able to manage emotions, to really be able to notice and take advantage of the emotions that a coach or a mentor feels in themselves, but also in the person that they're coaching or mentoring. Let's now have a look at emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is something that both a coach and a mentor need to have at a very high level in order to effectively do their job. So emotional intelligence really is the ability or the capacity or the skill to identify and assess and manage emotions both in yourself and those of others, whether that's one person or a group of people. And it's like saying we are like we are, but it's important to know how we are and to use it for our advantage. And this is how you manage your emotions, because everybody has emotions that affect them in different ways. And a good and a successful coach or a mentor will be able to harness those emotions in order to achieve a positive result. So let's have a look at Daniel Goleman's outline of the 5 main constructs of emotional intelligence. So the first is self-awareness. So this is the ability to recognize your emotions and to also recognize their impact. The next is self-management. So this is the ability to control your emotions and impulses in every circumstance that you're in. Then another construct of EI is motivation. And this is knowing that people always try to behave in a good manner, with good feeling, to the best of their ability. Also, Daniel Goleman believes that coaches and mentors need to be very socially aware. So this is the ability to feel and understand and to react to the emotions of other people within a social network. And then, of course, finally, they need to be very positive relationship managers. So they're able to inspire and to influence and motivate people even during times of conflict. Now if we dive a little bit deeper into Goleman's model, and let's look at, when it comes to the 5 dimensions, what would we say are the key behaviors that reflect these dimensions? So we said earlier that self-awareness is the ability to recognize your emotions and your moods and the effect they have on you and the effect they have on others. And somebody who has high self-awareness, has high self-confidence, is very able to assess themselves easily and effectively. But sometimes, because they have this heightened level of self-awareness, they may use self-deprecating, may have a very self-deprecating sense of humor. In terms of regulating feelings, we know that this is your ability to control your moods and your impulses. So to really think before you act rather than to just react to your emotions. And this person can be seen as being very trustworthy, integrity, and they might be very open to change because they're able to recognize change in themselves. So In terms of motivation, third dimension, we know that this is really a passion for your work, and this is passion beyond just money and status, and it's your ability to achieve your goals with high energy and to be persistent. So in terms of your behavior, you have a high need for achievement. Even in the face of failure, this person is very optimistic. And so these are typically people that are very committed to the organization that they work for. The fourth dimension is empathy. So this is recognizing and understanding emotions in other people. And highly empathetic people, especially when they're coaches and mentors, are able to build and retain talented people in their organization. And they're able to also communicate well cross-culturally. That's really important. And the final dimension is social skills. So how far can you effectively manage relationships and build networks? You're able to manage to find common ground between you and other people and to build rapport. And a person that has very high social skills is somebody that's able to effectively lead a team, be very persuasive, and motivate people to get the job done. So what are the benefits of being emotionally intelligent? Well, of course, it allows you to become more self-aware. It means that you are typically more emotionally stable because you don't react to heightened emotions of any degree. It will reduce tension and stress because you're able to make sense of your emotions during situations of high stress and high tension. And actually, it does improve performance in your team members because they are able to recognize what their strengths are and recognize what their developments are themselves and then seek to improve those. It also increases your ability to be more empathetic and to have better relationships with people. And actually it helps to have more productive relationships with people when you recognize who you are and recognize what other people are. And somebody who has high emotional intelligence is typically a very, very influential leader. And actually research that looked at what skills influence success, out of 16 skills that were identified, 14 were emotional skills, what we call soft skills. So actually what this means in terms of leadership is that a leader really needs to manage their own emotions. They will need to understand the emotions of their employees and their superiors and get the best out of them. So this could be when a manager or a leader is in a meeting and they are in a meeting with their peers and their superiors and their team. They're able to recognize and manage all the conflicting emotions in the room in order to achieve whatever objective that particular meeting has been set. And so a true leader will fail or shine depending on their self-awareness. So this is where they will overcome their feelings of blame or whether they're feeling fearful about something. They will have high self-control, so they will be able to avoid having erratic reactions from group members purely based on emotion. They are very motivational and they persevere. So leaders with high emotional intelligence will be able to motivate themselves and motivate others. And they'll also be able to motivate their team to persevere in times of conflict or uncertainty. And also, the impact of emotional intelligence on leadership is the ability to be more empathetic. So be able to listen to and understand members of the team and also make them feel like they're being listened to and make them feel like they're being understood. And then finally, leadership really is understanding that failure is a source for learning, not a source for judgment. So if you fail in a task yourself as a leader, or if your team do, then you don't use that to dish out punishment, but you use that as a learning mechanism, and the failure is used in a positive way. And this brings us to the end of our module on coaching and mentoring.